on the City Council. Again, I'm Mike McGinnis, Pontiac City Council President. I'd like to turn the floor now over so he can speak to the meat and potatoes about the changes that we're proposing. So please, without further ado, welcome City Councilman Mikhail Goodman.
All right, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Mikhail Goodman. I am a city council person here in the city of Pontiac. I just have to say it, the youngest city council person ever elected, and I think that says a lot about my belief and framing on this. First, I want to thank all of you for being here today. As Mike pointed out, I am a renter. I've been a renter my entire life in the city of Pontiac, both growing up in Section 8 housing on the east side to, paying half of my income on rent every single month when I was working at a school, to now being on city council and still being a renter here in the city. I am someone who, like tens of thousands of people in the city, I worry about rent going up and the quality that we have continually going down. And, it's really difficult for many of us to figure out if we actually truly have a safe place to call home. And that's why I am really excited and very happy to be introducing what I like to call Pontiac's Renter Bill of Rights. This package of proposed ordinances is something that I've been working on for years with council, with many other housing activists and advocates and policymakers, because this is years of conversations and complaints and calls and real life experiences that have informed these policies. I personally, and many people on council, are tired of watching families be boxed out and forced into situations that no one wants to be in. And I think it's very clear that many of us have heard you, especially those of us here on Pontiac City Council. And that's why we are going to make the strongest attempt to make Pontiac the most pro-renter city in the state of Michigan. So I have a couple things in front of you, well, in front of me, to be able to read off in terms of the policies that we are proposing. The first being the disclosure of fees, making sure landlords must disclose all fees on the application, including the application fee, pet, and late fees before a lease is signed to prevent surprise charges and allow tenants to make informed decisions. A limit on late fees so that renters may not be charged exorbitant late fees because it is already difficult enough as it is paying rent. Adding on $50 to $100 in late fees, it only makes it more difficult. Having a written lease requirement, that way tenants must be given a lease. That way they know what the terms of their lease are. That way they cannot be screwed over by their landlord, by their slumlord in many cases, sometimes by people who are not even attempting to truly do the job of being a good faith landlord. A right to renew, a right to fair notice, and relocation assistance. Tenants who have abided by their lease must be offered a fair opportunity to renew their lease. And in cases of displacement, be provided with relocation assistance, making sure that whoever is being pushed out of their housing actually has some reasonable recourse to be able to continue to have stable housing in the meantime. Having just cause eviction, we are all very aware of the number of times that we've heard about landlords evicting someone just because they don't like the person or they simply don't like how they've been going about things, and so they find a way to push them out. Making sure that there's actual reasons for kicking someone out, and there are reasons for that, destroying a property and so on and so forth, but making sure that landlords aren't just arbitrarily throwing out people who they do not like, who they do not want. Making sure that we have humane pet requirements. I think this is a thing that both me and Councilman Mike McGinnis share. We both are pet parents. I have 2 cats myself. My friend who works in the legislature has also introduced a bill to do the same thing, but making it to where landlords cannot require declawing, devocalization, and neutering as a requirement for moving in. That way we're both protecting the rights of the tenant and protecting the humane rights of the pets that we all know and love. In addition, we have increasing the notice before non-payment evictions. Currently in the city of Pontiac, it is 7 days between when someone is given that notice and when it is acted on further. So increasing that to 14 days. That way people actually have time to be able to get the money to be able to make those payments, because many of us do not work on a week-to-week basis when it comes to our paychecks. We get paid bi-weekly or bi-monthly. And so giving that additional time really allows our tenants to be able to make the effort to be able to stay in the homes that they're already in. A really big one is move-in and move-out inspections. I know a lot of people who have moved into a place that has, not everything fixed, but you're in a rush to move in somewhere, so you have somewhere to be. And there are things that need to be fixed that your landlord's like, oh, I'll fix it later, and then later never comes. So make sure that there is some recourse that the city can help out with tenants when they're moving in, and also when they're moving out, because many of us have known when landlords have kept your security deposit for arbitrary reasons, and you're trying to fight them on it, and you have no real way of proving it. Well, having the city offer some assistance in helping also do some of those move-out inspections to help you do that checklist. That way, there is a little bit more, weight to the fact that you, deserve your security deposit. Making sure that tenants are given a lease copy, not just making sure that there's a written lease requirement, making sure that tenants actually receive that lease, and that landlords are not holding that back as a secret thing of, oh, I know it's in your lease, but you don't. A prorated rent requirement. That way, if a tenant moves in mid-month, they're not required to pay the full amount for what they're not there for, because I think that's just real common sense policy. If I move in halfway through a month, I don't think I should be paying for the other half that I was not there. And a lot of landlords already do this, but making sure that this is a standard across the board for people who are moving into our city. Receipt for rent paid in cash. A lot of people pay cash rent. A lot of people don't, but there's a good number that do, and some of them are able to, keep track of when they've been able to pay their landlord. Some aren't, and landlords have been able to really get around on that. So making sure that there are receipt requirement for rents paid in cash. That way, tenants have that statement of like, yes, I did pay rent. I did pay. You cannot say that I didn't, which goes into, again, a lot of the evictions that happen across the board. A restriction on automatic lease renewals, making it to where landlords can't just arbitrarily renew the lease either without the tenant knowing it. Actually giving them the chance to be able to make the decision clear-eyed as possible. And then the very last one is pushing for a affordable housing preservation inventory. There is affordable housing. There is not enough of it, and unfortunately that number of affordable housing continues to decrease. And so as a city, taking the very important step of making sure that we know where the affordable housing is, how much longer it's going to last, when it might turn out, and then in turn also letting the community know that. That way, if there are any nonprofits or groups that want to take on that affordable housing, or if there's a person who wants to buy a building for themselves, being able to make sure that there's a way for our community to keep housing affordable in our community, opposed to it becoming market rate and being sent off somewhere else. And again, I think that these are all very important bits of ordinances and policy because they are not radical in any way. These are very reasonable protections that are done in cities across Michigan and some outside of Michigan who have been really trying to push the boundaries and make being a tenant, being a renter, something that is actually safe and protected and not exploited. It's about creating a housing system where the dignity of renters is not an afterthought, because none of these policies are anti-landlord. They're pro-people, because people deserve a place to live. We all need shelter to live, and I think it's very fair that people have that stability in a way that is not hung over their head. As costs keep rising, as wages for people across the board and fixed incomes have not really increased, and properties are falling apart, we have to do our part to make sure that we are defending and protecting the quality and quality of life for the people who live here in Pontiac. And that's why we're acting. That's why we're doing what we're doing, because something has to be done. We can't continue to wait on other policymakers above us to do these things when there are some tools that we have in our tool belt that we can take on and do ourselves. I your zip code and where you live at should not be a determination of your housing quality. And I think that, it's about high time that a city that is 64% renter actually takes it seriously to defend the people who we have here. But opposed to keep talking, I do want to hand it off to someone who's been very, very deeply involved in my fight for this here and for policies really all across Metro Detroit, for protecting renters' rights, protecting the rights really of everyone who is providing and taking on housing. And that would be Mr. Steve Tomkowiak from the Fair Housing Center for Metro Detroit.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be here. And we're here to lend our support to this. I call it a landlord-tenant bill of rights, really, is what it is. But just real quick background, our office serves Wayne, Oakland, Macomb, and St. Clair counties, roughly 40% of the state population. We assist people who have claimed to be a victim of housing discrimination, as well as other housing-related inquiries such as security deposit disputes, lease renewals, the whole gamut. So everything that's been mentioned here are things that we deal with on a daily basis. So it's very, very important. But way of real background is I met a couple years ago with Mayor Gramil to push forward some initiatives, source of income, late fee regulation or some restriction on the ability to overcharge on late fees, as well as habitability requirement permitting tenants to withhold rent when repairs aren't done. There wasn't a lot of movement until McHale got involved and Council President McGinnis as well. In last year, I think it was March 2023, if I'm not mistaken, passed a very, very broad fair housing ordinance, including source of income protections. It's outstanding legislation. I'll give you one example. It covers people that are seeking FHA or VA financing. That's not provided at the state level. Doesn't include that under the source of income legislation at the state level. It also does not have an exemption. It doesn't matter how many properties a housing provider rents out, it's still covered under the ordinance, meaning you can't discriminate based on any protected class category or source of tenant. Really, it's shocking, but under the Federal Fair Housing Act and our Michigan law, they can discriminate if they're exempt. So it's not the broad coverage we would hope it to be. But that got adopted in March of 2023, if my memory is correct. However, what I'm just thrilled to see this, package, really, it's a complete set. It puts Pontiac, from our perspective, the leading if adopted, it puts Pontiac at the leading edge of any municipality. There are some, Ann Arbor has done some good work in this area. There's some other cities that have done really well with this. None have the full measure of all of these provisions. And these are not something new. It's not some wild creation of McHale. These are ones that have been adopted in other municipalities. It's just that none have a full range or the broad scope that this one has. And this is not pro-tenant, anti-landlord. I think McHale was trying to, saying that as well. Our office serves everyone that has needs when it comes to housing, fair housing, ask questions, whether they're a landlord, tenant, management company, owner, municipality. We do trainings with municipalities, board of equalization departments, bank, I can name it. There's not any entity that we do not do fair housing training. So what we find is what's covered here are things that we deal with on a everyday basis. The misperception in this state is that Michigan has good landlord-tenant protections. It may have been good when many of these were adopted in the 1970s, but they're very old and very stale, and states have passed us. If you want to do red-blue, red states have passed us in terms of tenant protections. We're not where we need to be or should be as a state. And this is an opportunity for Pontiac. Hopefully, this will proceed. It will be, passed by City Council, and it will be an example for something to be considered at the statewide level. Disclosure of fees, yes, there's junk fees. There's no question about it. I was told that you can't use the term junk fees because it has a negative connotation. I think it has a negative connotation because it should. Late fees has always been a passion of mine going back years. And because when people are low income, they're often one step from homelessness, and late fees can push people over the limit. It also, the best legislation says that you can't evict based on late fees alone. Written lease agreement, all kinds of problems, especially with housing so scarce, or affordable housing so scarce, or habitable housing so scarce. People are doing shared living arrangements. Those are often on oral agreements. So those need to be in writing so that there's a clear understanding. We have complaints where someone comes in, makes a complaint with us, and they find out that they think they've rented the whole home, and they find out that the landlord has moved somebody into the basement who's using utilities free of charge, or the landlord has things in their garage and they can't use the garage. They thought they were renting the whole building, the home and everything else, but they don't have a written lease which spells out exactly what is being rented. That's just one example. I could go on and on with examples of that. Right to renew, fair notice, relocation assistance, key protections. Just cause eviction, it should be. One of the sources of housing discrimination are non-renewals because they don't give a reason. If a landlord or homeowner is going to put a family member in or wants to sell the property, that's perfectly fine. Tell the tenant. Other times, if there's no reason given, there is a reason why someone is not being renewed. Whether they haven't paid their rent on time or whatever, there is a reason, but they should come out and say it. That's all. It's not asking a landlord to do something that they are not doing. They already know why they're non-renewing. It's just a little honesty in the process. Unfortunately, courts will rubber stamp it and treat it like, well, it's a non-renewal. They don't have to give a reason, so therefore you're out. Most of our most significant discrimination cases are non-renewals. They are not going to say, we're not renting anymore to you because you're black, you have children, because you have an assistance animal. They don't say that. They simply do a non-renewal. Or someone filed a complaint with the Michigan Department of Civil Rights or HUD, they'll do a non-renewal with no reason given. So this is necessary not only in Pontiac, but throughout the state. Pet requirements, yes. I don't think someone should have to have their pet neutered and those kind of requirements because they don't want, we see it with assistance animals. It's a way of excluding tenants that have assistance animals. Notice before non-payment evictions. Under state law, even if a judge wants to, after an order, a judgment of possession has been issued, the judge by law can only go 10 days. It's up to the mercy of the landlord to extend that period. And they sometimes do up to 30 days, but they don't have to, and oftentimes they don't. This can't affect that process, but what it does do, it extends a non-payment required notice from 7 days to 14 days. 1 week may not sound much to people with a regular paycheck, but as Mikhail pointed out, people that are low income, 7 days is a big deal for some people. That's the difference between catching up on their rent and not. We can't do one law to solve all the problems, but these are all incremental improvements that will help to address the problems of unaffordable housing and ultimately resulting in homelessness. Move in, move out inspections, those are required. It needs to be emphasized, which these set, we need, what do you call it, renters' rights, or this slate of ordinance would do that. Giving tenants a lease copy, absolutely. You would think that would be a given. But people contact us and the landlord promises and does not give them the lease. Amazing. Prorated rent, that should be common sense. It shouldn't be charging somebody a full month's rent if they don't live there during the full month rent. Receipt for rent paid in cash. That's a major problem that we face. We deal with this all the time. We've had people complain to us that the housing provider won't give them a receipt. So then they have to go do money orders, and sometimes there's an issue with that. So it's not proof that the landlord actually got it, just a pure money order receipt. But here, a written receipt for the rent or for that kind of a payment is so necessary. They need it if there's a claim that they haven't paid the rent and they're being evicted. Mistakes get made. Another one is that people don't get a rent ledger. No rent ledger. So yeah, this is a great step for that. There's people that well, don't they have to give us a ledger? No, they don't. There's no requirement for that. These are not things that legitimate, good faith landlords, owners would have a problem with. I don't think. Who would have a problem with giving somebody a receipt? It's not. It's just surprising in 2025 that we don't have these kinds of things in place or that this is even necessary. But we need to do this. Restriction on automatic renewals of lease, it's good, right? By law, it becomes month to month, but tenants don't know that. They're not sure if when the lease gets renewed, if it's a month-to-month basis or for a yearly basis. They need to know that. Affordable housing, preservation inventory, we're the great source. That's an issue for us because we get many, many calls here and here. How many calls do we get about people looking for housing? And where do they go to get the housing? And that's really, really important. All of these have our full support. And I think this goes a long way for Pontiac to be an example for other cities, villages, townships, and the state as to what they can do to serve their community. When I go to events on the pullover clinic and everything else, the gentlemen standing behind me are always there. They're true public servants. They're committed to the community. They show up time and time again because they care. They don't have to do this. Some of these things, they may face some repercussions. They shouldn't. But these are gentlemen that are legitimate, compassionate, committed to the welfare of everybody in Pontiac, and I cannot possibly support them enough for this effort. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. And we are not moving in a vacuum. We are not living in a vacuum. All of these policy proposals that City Council will be taking up and considering in the weeks and months to come are building off of the successes that Pontiac City Council has already implemented. I shared with you at the top that we have rebuilt the code enforcement team and rental inspections team in our city, and they are making so much of a difference for our residents already, where we are aggressively ensuring that all rental properties are registered, inspected, safe, and meeting the existing baseline requirements. What we're looking at now is building off of that success. And while we're working on these policy issues, we want to increase home ownership. We want to increase the stability of our neighborhoods, and we want to see more quality housing of all sizes and all price points coming and opening in Pontiac. We've seen some initial successes there, but we've got a lot more to do. So I want to make sure I emphasize that. This is a full City Council initiative. It will be coming before the full City Council, and all of those improvements that we have made, it's been unanimous City Council votes. So I want to acknowledge we also have in the audience our colleague, City Councilwoman Melanie Rutherford, representing District 1. These improvements that have happened so far have been unanimous City Council votes. And we will be, just as a status update, today at our City Council meeting, we're initiating the process to pursue these ordinance changes. It'll go through research and review, it'll be debated fully, and then we'll see should all or some be adopted. And then I look forward to working with all of my City Council colleagues to keep pushing the ball down the field so that way Pontiac residents are protected as we continue to improve the quality of life, improve the operations of our city government, advocating and centering Pontiac residents first and foremost. So if there's any questions from the media, myself, Mikhail, Steve, we can field them. We, of course, shared the press release yesterday. You can, as we work through this process, you'll be able to get into the meat and potatoes of the specific proposals and the language drafted. But that's where we're at. Are there any questions? All right. Well, thank you all for sharing your valuable time today. Contact information has been shared with you already, but you're happy to do one-on-one conversations if it's useful. And thank you for paying attention to Pontiac, because Pontiac matters. And as you've heard, we're looking to be a bold leader so that way Pontiac is innovating on policy matters as it relates to housing, affordable housing, quality housing, and renter protections. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Steve, for your time.
Appreciate it.
Thank you, Councilman.